The old motel stood alone at the edge of the highway, hidden behind a thick layer of fog that never seemed to lift. Travelers who stayed the night often left before dawn, their eyes sunken, their skin pale, and their voices shaky as if they'd carried a nightmare back with them. Some never left at all. There was a rule, one simple rule, whispered among truckers and late-night wanderers: listen before checking in. But Mark and Lisa, a young couple on a road trip, never heard the warning. The rain poured relentlessly as Mark drove through the winding road, gripping the steering wheel with knuckles white from exhaustion. Lisa, curled up in the passenger seat, was barely holding herself together. Their honeymoon had turned into a disaster. Lost wallets, a broken-down car, and now endless miles of nothingness. Mark stole a glance at her tear-streaked face, guilt crushing him. "We should stop for the night," he whispered, reaching for her hand. Lisa didn't respond. She was thinking about the baby, the one they never got to hold, the one whose absence felt like a gaping wound in her soul. Then, out of nowhere, a neon sign flickered through the downpour. Hollow Pines Motel, vacancy. They never should have stopped. The front desk was empty, except for a rusted bell and an old guest book. The place smelled of damp wood and something metallic, like rust or blood. Lisa ran her fingers along the keys on the wall. "Hello?" she called. A door creaked open, and a woman emerged from the shadows. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow, her lips moving as if whispering to someone unseen. Mark cleared his throat. "We need a room for the night." The woman didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a single key into his palm and whispered, "Listen before checking in." The words crawled under Mark's skin like spiders. They ignored the warning. Their room was at the end of the hall, room 306. The door moaned as it swung open. Inside, the walls were covered in strange markings, symbols that seemed to shift when they weren't looking. A wooden rocking chair faced the window, though the wind outside was still. Lisa sank onto the bed, exhausted. Mark turned on the TV, but only static filled the screen. Then they heard it, a soft sobbing. Lisa's breath hitched. It was a child's cry, muffled, desperate, and coming from inside the room. Mark grabbed Lisa's hand, his pulse thundering. The sound grew louder, closer, until the air felt thick with sorrow. Lisa turned, and for a brief second, she saw tiny footprints appear on the dusty floor. She choked back a sob. "Mark!" The baby. But Mark wasn't listening. He was staring at the rocking chair, because it was moving, and there was someone sitting in it. The figure in the chair was small, fragile, wrapped in a tattered white sheet. It swayed gently, its face obscured, whispering, "You didn't listen." The walls trembled, the ceiling groaned, the bed sheets twisted as if unseen hands were gripping them. Then the figure lifted its head. Lisa screamed, because the face staring back at them was their unborn child. Its hollow eyes locked onto Lisa's, a deep sorrow radiating from its tiny form. But the sorrow twisted into something else. Hunger. The lights flickered. Shadows stretched across the room. The whispers turned into guttural growls. Then a knock at the door. 3 sharp taps. A voice. Low, raspy, familiar. "Room service." The door handle rattled violently. Mark grabbed Lisa, pulling her back. The knocking grew louder, more frantic. Then silence. Mark crept toward the door, heart hammering. He opened it, and his breath left his lungs in a scream, because standing in the hallway was himself. A second Mark, drenched in blood, his face twisted in terror. He lifted a shaking hand and whispered, "No smoking. You should have listened." Then the lights went out.